All right, good morning. Welcome to Hunter's Home. Today we're in the Daniel cabin. It is kind of a nice, cool morning, and we wanted to get some of our cabbage preserved and ready for use over the winter time. So today we are going to make sauerkraut. The process is very easy. All we need is a vessel to put it in, cabbage, and salt. Okay, so now we're going to start prepping our crock here. Basically what I like to do is take some of the outer leaves that are a little tough, and I just place them in the bottom of the crock. And you don't have to do this. This is just something that I prefer to do. So now we have a lining in there to put the rest of the shredded cabbage on top of. So we make our sauerkraut into smaller batches, but basically we start out usually roughly around 5 pounds of cabbage to about 3 tablespoons of salt. You give or take a little on the salt there, but so that's kind of the general rule by which we work with. So about 5 pounds of cabbage to about 3 tablespoons full of salt. Okay, so we are going to start cutting our cabbage up. Now there's several ways you can do this. You can do this with a knife. That's usually how I do it. You can also, if you're fortunate enough to have a kraut cutter, you can use one of those as well. But what we want to do is we want to get the core out of there, this is where it's attached to the root system there. So basically what I do is I just take it, cut it down through the center of that. So I will put this head of cabbage into quarters, and then as you can see that core running right there, and I just simply take my knife and take that out of there. I'll put this over to the side. Makes a tasty snack for some of the animals around here. And then we're going to cut this up into fairly thin slices. Some people like to cut it up into thicker slices or shred it very fine. I like it kind of about that thick there, maybe 1/16 of an inch or so. And then after we shred this entire head, we are going to put it into the crock there and put some salt on it. So there's also another method too as well that I've heard people say that you can cut it into quarters and salt the whole quarter, or you can even turn it upside down and cut the core out of the center and then pour salt in and fill that whole void up, and preserve the whole entire head of cabbage in one piece like that. Now that I've got about half of that, we're going to do this in layers. So this always seems to work out best for me, the way that I like to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crumble up some of this. You can see it comes right apart just the way it grows. It'll also break down once it starts to ferment inside of there. This fermentation process that this is going to go through, exactly the same fermentation process that we get with yogurt. So it's a good thing here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of salt here, about 2 or 3 fingers worth, and I'm going to kind of sprinkle that around over there. And just to get it going, I'm going to mix it up to where I can feel that it feels like there's a little bit of salt kind of covering all of the pieces of the cabbage. The really fun part of this is that right about the time that salt hits there, this cabbage feels fairly dry when I cut it, but now I'm starting to feel the moisture that's being pulled out of the cabbage by the salt almost almost instantly. So you can see my fingers are starting to become a little damp from that, even just from that little bit that we put on there. So now what we do is that we want to pack this in here so it's packed in there fairly tight. We want the air to kind of start coming out of there. So I'm going to take this this masher, and I'm just going to start packing that down in there, and we'll continue to do that process with every layer that we put on there. So I'm going to take some more, and I'm going to put another layer in, and I won't get in there and mix this all up like I did on that first batch. I will just simply salt over the top and then continue to pack the cabbage into the crock. So let's put a little bit of salt on there, just a pinch, and then we'll go back to the... Might want to be a little careful in this process when you do this, that you don't get too wild in packing this and knock the bottom clear out of the crock on the first few layers that you do, but you do want to pack it fairly tightly. And I will continue to cut up and layer this in until we get to the top. So as you can see, we have this is about one head of cabbage. I like to leave a little bit of a space in there. This is probably all that I'll put in this crock right now. But it will start to ferment, and this will actually, we will start seeing a liquid form in there. If it doesn't, if the liquid doesn't start to cover the cabbage in a day or so, you can add a brine to it, or pour a little water in there with it to cover the cabbage. You want the cabbage to remain under the liquid, the brine that starts to form as it ferments. It will start to bubble, so you will see bubbles that come up on there, and it will make sometimes a little film. We will weight this down. We'll put a small plate or a weight in there to keep the cabbage below the brine level, and then in about 4 to 6 weeks, as the bubbles quit forming on top of the brine that's in there with the cabbage, it will be ready to start eating. So here's a batch that we have done a few days prior. So you can see inside of there's a little bit of liquid that's starting to form, and that's about where we want it, being that this is about 4 days, about 4 or 5 days old. So I am going to place this plate back in there on top of it and kind of press that down. You can see that the liquid is starting to form up over the top there, to flow over it, and we can tell that it's also starting to ferment, because there's a distinctive smell that comes off of this process as well. But what I'm going to do is I will take a glass jar, and I will fill it full of water, and I will place it in on top of this plate to keep the cabbage underneath of the liquid, so that no bad bacteria can get started in there. So now that we've got all of our cabbage shredded up, got them salted well, what we're going to do now is we will take these over, place these in the basement of the big house in a cool area, and allow them to ferment for their 4 to 6 weeks.